Welcome back again. I often ponder many thoughts as I try and fall asleep, my mind still racing when I cannot, and the places it travels to. Thoughts of what happens in the dark. Maybe you think that you see a figure in the corner of the room, only to blink, and then it's gone, and wonder if it is just your imagination, your mind playing tricks on you. The things we cannot see or explain, yet feel the presence. Perhaps something even as small as an unexplained feeling of electricity running through your fingertips, or that cold shiver running down your spine, leaving the hair on the back of your neck and arms standing on end. You might wake up in the middle of the night, only to come face to face with something looking right at you within a few inches, that makes you want to hide under the covers, much like you probably did as a child, afraid of the dark, reaching for that nightlight switch. There is something in the void that tethers our world with the shadowy dimensions within it. Things heard, something as soft as a whisper, or someone calling out your name when no one else is there, glimpses of something moving in the corner of your eye, but too quick for you to catch it. Or you can simply ignore them altogether, though they will still exist whether you want it to or not. They are watching you, observing and whispering to you into the dark, as you lay awake at night. Can you hear them, and what they are saying? Not everything can be explained so easily, though keeping an open mind, perhaps even faith, may be what keeps you safe. It may even save your very soul from the shadows that dance in the dark as you sleep. Without further ado, I give you Bloodlines, Chupacabra, Chapter 12, The Sacrifice and the Missing Priest. As night fell and the four remaining in the group sat patiently awaiting what could be the death of them all, couldn't help but wonder, both puzzled and confused by the latter father's absence. I fathomed to even think what became of him, and how he could have sauntered off without a word. Had Father Miguel Santoro lied? Had he simply finished whatever it was he had been up to when he snuck off down into those dark, musty caverns? Well, I know not of what his true intentions were, for whatever had propelled him to go it alone, he was now among the missing list of people. The fact was that he had simply disappeared into the ether, with not so much as footprints left behind. Cal thought maybe he wasn't even real. There had been tales of ghostly apparitions so real you'd thought that it was impossible, yet people have claimed that a person would be there one minute, fully interacting with them, only for them to turn around and find that person vanished. Was Father Miguel Santoro a specter, or a figment of their imaginations? What could he have been doing down there, and how could he have just left without them even seeing him? It was one way in and one way out. It was absolutely impossible, yet somehow they had missed him. The candle and the scrolls were left behind. It made no sense. No speck of logic would explain it. Well, whatever the case, he was gone, and the Chupacabra was not. The air grew dense as a few thundering claps could be heard in the distance. A few drops of rain hit Father Flanagan as he looked up and saw that a few dark clouds had started to roll in. Lightning lit up the sky beyond the mountains, giving it almost an ethereal-like appearance. As the storm rolled in closer, lightning struck a little too close for comfort, so much so that everyone in the group thought they ought to take shelter, as they each one of them could feel the energy from the single bolt. As another one shot through the sky, it hit the ground so hard that it split the tree at the eastern side of the farmhouse near them in two. "Yeah, guys, that's a little too close for comfort," yelps Cal. "It's not like we really have a choice, but I do have the Bronco. We could give it up to the edge and stay inside, at least keep dry and warm," says Father Ted. "Nah, that would take too long, but I do have a tarp folded in my backpack that'll have to do until this storm passes," says Larry. The four of them helped Larry unroll and fold the tarp out as they hunkered beneath it away from any trees, in a ditch near the left side of the old barn. But the storm continued its violent rampage across the valley. Larry, remembering how Cal and Sandra had watched the bridge collapse with the last storm, they weren't taking any chances at all. Not one of them could have predicted that it was only about to get much worse. Cal and Sandra were growing weary with fatigue, and he had noticed that she had been slightly leaning onto him for support, only to realize that she had actually started to doze off. Not wanting to be rude, he put his arms around her, then moved her gently to steady her as he helped her lay down. To let her rest, he took his jacket and rolled it up for her to place her head on, even for a few moments. As Cal himself was tired, try as he did what he could to muster up a little energy by doing a few push-ups to keep himself from dozing off as well. Father Flanagan helped Cale by keeping awake and watching over their exhausted Chupacabra would-be assassin, knowing that she needed her strength more than the two men did. Someone had to keep watch. Sandra had slowly drifted off, no longer being able to keep her eyes open. The pull of sleep overwhelmed her, and she decided to just give in to it. Once lulled to sleep, she dreamt, but not of beautiful things like going on vacations or the things that made her happy in her waking life. No, instead she was pulled into a nightmarish landscape where the sun was blood red and the sky black. The moonless night crept towards her with shadows enveloping her at every corner. As she tried to run, she suddenly found herself slowed down, almost as if she were running in place. Just as the shadows crept in closer, she fell onto the ground so hard. She could feel the earth, the dirt, under her hands as she grabbed a handful of it, then letting it fall away, back to the ground. Even the texture and the feeling of the dirt felt so real. A warm feeling washed over her as she picked herself up and brushed the dirt from off of her pants. She walked a little further, missing a step, stumbling, falling forward as she plummeted down a hole, falling in what she thought might have been an old well, as she landed into a rather deep pond, only to realize that she could stand up, as it was only about 4 feet of water. Silly, she thought, but at least she was safe from the previous landscape. Like a switch that had been flipped, she was in yet another realm, but this one was much less malevolent than the last, and it was there she saw a running brook, bubbling along the side of a farmhouse. The sun in the sky no longer blood red, and the landscape lush with flowers and tall green grass. Walking closer, she began to notice there were no people at all, just an empty farm. As she ventured closer, walking through the step-stone path around the house to the front of the wrap-around porch. Ascending the stairs, she came to the front door. It had the goat's head symbol carved into it, just like the one below ground, inside of the cave with the sacrificial altar. She reached forward to slowly grab onto the doorknob. The scene within her dream blurred. She felt that she was being pulled away by a force, then felt a jolt that radiated through her body, only then realizing she had been awakened by her companions as they talked amongst themselves. Once the worst of the storm had finally passed, after what seemed to have been over 2 hours, Larry dropped the tarp, nudging Cal to gently that Sandra, who had fallen asleep, was now wide awake and alert. "Glad to see that you're finally awake," said Larry. "Yeah, sorry about that. I just gave in to it. I just couldn't seem to keep my eyes open. I'm sorry," said Sandra. "Why are you apologizing? You need it, and I am glad you did," said Cal. Out in the dark, there was a slight rustle of leaves as the wind kicked up. Worried about another storm, Larry suggested they group together. A noise of low moaning was coming from the other side of the ruins near an old chicken coop. As quick as he could grab his flashlight, he told everyone to stay put while he checked on where the noise was emanating from. As he rounded the side of the coop, he caught a glint of reflection off of an object laying on the ground. There in the dark, within the confines of the coop, on the ground, and in a considerable amount of pain, was Father Santoro, bleeding from his side. "What in the Sam Hill, Father?" Larry exclaimed. "How in the absolute hell did this happen? And before you say it, we know you went down there to the altar. But first, let me help you, okay?" Larry could see that the weary and foolish younger man was clearly injured, though once addressing his wounds not too severely, he'd been lucky. "I tried to," he croaked out weakly. "I was trying to recite a spell and it backfired. I lit a candle and it blew up in my face, knocking me to the ground. And I was cut by something. I think I angered the old gods for my foolishness. I thought I could bring him back to help us, even if in spirit, just to guide me." Choking back tears, the priest was shaken, and yet somehow Larry understood him. "Do you mean Father Pietro, your friend?" Larry was confused as to why he'd even considered trying something like that, without knowing what he was doing. "Yes, I need his guidance. I don't know what I am doing. We never got that far in the reading before he was killed. The bishop said cursed for finding those scrolls." "Wait, you think that the Chupacabra killed him? But how?" No, the priest said weakly. "The cardinal, I believe, that he was conspiring against him for another matter altogether, involving the cardinal, over a very delicate and very damning reason, involving the church cover-up when he was a priest in Venezuela 4 years ago. I am sorry, Father." Larry knew grief. He felt sorry for Father Santoro. I will explain. It's a long story, and I'll be quick, Mr. Whitfield. It was 4 years ago. The Cardinal Sam Perez was involved in a rather terrible scandal over abuse of a few boys in his parish. That's why he moved to ours in San Salvador. He was under investigation, and Father Pietro found him out after he left his Bible behind. Father Pietro went to return it when a clipping from a newspaper in Venezuela fell from its leaves. The page had a photo of Father Sam Perez coming out of a courtroom. The article said that the judge found him not guilty and covered up the abuse, paid off by the bishops. But then he was removed and sent to our church to hide him there. Okay, now I understand everything. But will you hold still, please? I need to see your wound to get it cleaned and bandaged, Father. And you know the others are worried and, we sacrificed the chicken and followed your Santeria instructions. Ah, well, now we wait. It's all we can do, Mr. Whitfield. Father, so I kinda thought maybe that you were the Chupacabra at first, says Larry, as he checks the priest's wound, noting that it was a good gash, but nothing serious. He grabs a flask of whiskey from his fanny pack and washes the wound carefully as the priest flinches in pain. Yes, I can see how my stupidity could have caused for concern, and I am sorry I did not mean to deceive you all by my actions. I just wanted to try and reach my friend. I get it. Grief can make us do weird things. I lost my wife recently, so I understand your need to try and communicate, says Larry. I felt lost, and I didn't think that I could do it without him reading the scrolls. I see now I must do this on my own without him, the battered priest sighs, as Larry helps him to his feet. Father, just one thing though, when you said the candle blew up, did you happen to notice anything else down there in the tunnel with the altar? No, just my ignorance blowing up in my face, but I did smell something like gasoline. I think that's why the candle blew up. There were fumes. I am surprised you did not notice. Larry scratching his head, confused by the priest's revelations. No, we were pretty much overwhelmed by the horrid smell of rot and decay down there. Oh, okay, but I forgot the scrolls when I climbed through the back door. It led me here to the coop. I figured that's why none of you had seen me. I thought I might just lay here and couldn't find an excuse for my injuries. Then you found me. Whoa, wait, what? Larry exclaimed. A back door where? When we were down, there was nothing but a wall and altar. Behind the altar, the priest said, there was a door that opened when I hit the wall. A torch fixed to the side is a lever. It opened when I hit it. It fell to the ground while I was laying sideways after the explosion of the candle. I tried to get up, and I walked through, more or less crawled through. There are 2 different tunnels down there, twisting and winding. It was some time before finding my way out into this chicken coop. Beneath the floor, behind that roost over there on the left. Larry, staring in disbelief, but knowing that the priest was in fact telling the truth, or how could he have passed by without notice? Father Santoro tries to stand up, and with little movement due to his injury, limps over to the left side of the coop, pulling open the back of the bottom half of a board, underneath the roost, to reveal a small door leading to a crawl-through tunnel. Holy shit! Larry couldn't move and knew his gut wouldn't get past the hole to even attempt crawling in, nor would he, in case if the Chupacabra was down there already. Larry couldn't believe it. I never knew this whole time, and as a kid I used to collect eggs in here. He put his hand to his forehead, then over his mouth, shocked. There is something else you should know down there, the priest's finger pointing towards the small tunnel. There is a skeleton in the second from the right, just at the foot of the stairs, at the bottom, behind the altar door. I am sorry, but I think that may be the missing boy the old woman was angry at Father Flanagan about. He had this in his hand. Father Santoro stretches out his hand and gives Larry a locket. As he opens it, he notices the photographs inside are of Mary Crenshaw on one half and Mercer Crenshaw in the other, with old lady Crenshaw, as they were when they were younger, but it was them. Christ, so that's where Rory has been all of this time, cold and alone? My God, if we survive, I have to go down there. It's the right thing to do. I have to bring that old bat closure and give Rory a proper burial. I can't just leave him there. Larry's eyes were filled with tears, and he remembered how mean they had all been to the kid they deemed the retard. Rory, who'd been nearly suffocated from a difficult delivery, how they had teased and taunted him, now made Larry feel regretful and sick to his stomach. his half-brother, of whom he'd just found out was his kin, gone, and though lost forever in a cold, dark grave just beneath their feet all of those years before the farm burned to the ground, and might never have known if Father Santoro hadn't acted too brash and stupidly, trying to resurrect his own friend. Father, we will survive this, Mr. Larry. We will. And you will bury that boy. It is the right thing to do. His soul is trapped, and we will release him so that he can find peace. I promise you that. Okay, now let's get you back to the others. Father, we have a Chupacabra to kill, and you should know that Miss McCoy is the one. She is sacrificing herself for all of us. Larry bows his head and lets out a sigh. I couldn't stop her. I knew that she was the one. I just knew. Brave, that one. She just needed to realize it for herself. Larry grabs Father Santoro, getting him back up onto his feet, knowing the others had been so worried would be relieved that he was still alive, and not a ghost like Cal had thought. He'd hoped that the priest was still alive and had not abandoned them or tricked them in any sort of nefarious way. He was just a man, sad and missing his dear mentor. Around the bend, the group stare in amazement and confusion at the sight of Larry carrying the injured priest as they walk towards them. I really thought that you'd left us, said Sandra, hugging the injured man rather than being upset with him. The group piled in, Cal patting Father Santoro on the back. So definitely not a ghost. Okay, great to have you back safe, Father. Father Flanagan helping Larry sit him down while smiling, handing him the scrolls that he had left behind. Here, I think you left these down in the cavern. The older priest, glad to have him back with them, smiles and hands him his scrolls. Larry quickly caught the group up on what had happened and how Father Santoro had been found injured in the chicken coop. It was then, when they had all been so distracted by their friend's return, just behind them down in the depths of the cellar, that scratching could be heard emanating from below the farmhouse ruins. End Bloodlines Chupacabra Chapter 12, The Sacrifice and the Missing Priest. So did you think that Father Santoro was dead, or did you call my bluff? At any rate, having him back is better than not, and the group would be better for it, as he alone is the only one to read those damn scrolls. Anyways, until next time, remember to light the candles, say your prayers if you must, and try not to pay attention to the shadows as they dance in the dark, just out of sight in the corners of your eyes.